The WTA World didn't just react, it erupted. Eala's name was suddenly everywhere. Not because she lifted a trophy, not because of a shocking upset, but because of something no one saw coming. A sales surge so fast and so overwhelming that it forced the tennis world to pause and ask a single question. What does she understand that everyone else missed? This moment isn't about raw talent anymore. It's about influence, economics, and a 19-year-old who shifted the balance overnight. Eala was never meant to reach this position. She came from Manila with little more than a racket and belief, pushing through a global system that barely acknowledged her existence. The Philippines had never produced a WTA star. The infrastructure wasn't there. The funding wasn't there. The pathway wasn't there. But Alex didn't focus on what was missing. She focused on what was possible. At just 14 years old, she left home. Spain became her new world. The Rafa Natal Academy replaced everything familiar, and while most teenagers were navigating school and social life, Alex was grinding through endless sessions on red clay, learning from champions, bleeding through blisters, and carrying the expectations of an entire nation. Every match became more than competition. It was a message to every Filipino kid watching that they belonged on the stage. But belonging and surviving are two very different battles. The WTA Tour is unforgiving. It destroys prodigies and turns promise into cautionary tales. Alex knew that reality well. She watched players with bigger budgets, stronger teams, and louder reputations move ahead while she fought through qualifiers, collecting ranking points like currency. Injuries arrived, doubt followed. There were quiet hotel room nights across Europe where the question must have surfaced, is this sacrifice worth it? Then something shifted. It wasn't a grand slam breakthrough. It wasn't a viral upset. It happened quietly, almost invisibly. Alex began building something away from the court. Her social presence didn't feel manufactured. It felt real. She didn't just post highlights, she shared the grind. Late-night practices, homesickness. The small wins that never make headlines but define careers. Filipinos rallied. Southeast Asia paid attention. Still, to the tennis establishment, she was just another rising name in a crowded field. No one predicted what came next. Because what followed had little to do with tennis scores. It was about timing, strategy, and understanding that the game itself had changed. The old rules no longer applied. Alex proved that you don't need a grand slam title to command power, you need to understand how the room operates. While analysts tracked her forehand, they completely missed her real weapon, her business ecosystem. And then it happened in just 48 hours. Eala transformed from promising prospect into an economic phenomenon. Her official merchandise sold out within 6 hours, not just in Manila, but across Tokyo, Singapore, Los Angeles, and New York. Her social following doubled overnight. Brands that had once ignored her agent's emails suddenly came forward with six-figure offers. Even challenger-level matches featuring Alex saw ticket demand surge by more than 300%. This wasn't slow, organic growth. This was a detonation. Tennis journalists scrambled for explanations. A viral clip, a controversy, a celebrity endorsement. They rewatched matches, searched for drama, replayed interviews. There was nothing unusual. No on-court meltdown. No officiating dispute. Just steady, composed tennis. The explosion wasn't happening on court, it was happening everywhere else. The answer became clear only after the impact was already felt. Alex's team had executed something unprecedented. A limited edition capsule collection, designed by a Filipino-American streetwear artist, dropped simultaneously with a short documentary series about her journey. Not on tennis platforms, on Netflix. Emotional, tightly produced episodes that connected with people who had never watched a tennis match in their lives. At the same time, influencers across Southeast Asia, not sports influencers but lifestyle creators, began sharing her story. Not paid promotions, genuine engagement, authentic resonance. The result wasn't hype, it was alignment. Eala didn't just play the game, she understood it. People weren't just talking about tennis anymore. They were talking about representation, about seeing themselves reflected in Eala's story, about what it meant to watch someone who looked like them compete on a global stage. The algorithm amplified it instantly. The content spread at wildfire speed. Then came the real shockwave, a partnership announcement with one of Asia's largest conglomerates, a company deeply embedded in technology, fashion, entertainment, and sports. This wasn't a standard sponsorship. They weren't just backing Alex as an athlete. They were investing in her as a brand. Billboards appeared across Manila, Jakarta, and Bangkok, not promoting a tournament, not promoting tennis, promoting Alex. Within 72 hours, she was trending in 14 countries. Her name was mentioned more times on social media than several Grand Slam champions, and she still hadn't won a WTA title. The tennis establishment didn't know how to react. Rival players watched their own engagement numbers stall and felt an uncomfortable realization settle in. Commentators argued openly. Was this brilliance or was it a gimmick? Fans were split. Some celebrated a young player taking control of her narrative. Others felt uneasy, like they were witnessing something that didn't belong in tennis. Because this wasn't just success, it was disruption, and disruption always makes people uncomfortable. That's when the backlash began. Tennis purists were furious. Online forums lit up with accusations. She's buying relevance. This isn't about tennis anymore, it's marketing. She hasn't earned this attention. The criticism came fast and from all directions: retired players, commentators, longtime fans who believed tennis should remain untouched by the influencer economy. A former top 10 player posted a thinly veiled tweet: "Remember when success on court determined your worth off it." It gathered over 40,000 likes. The message was unmistakable. Eala wasn't breaking rules, she was breaking tradition. And to many, money and influence felt more threatening than any on-court controversy. Rival players began speaking out cautiously at first. In press conferences, their answers were polite but distant. "Good for her, I guess. I prefer to focus on my ranking." The translation was obvious. This doesn't count as real tennis success. Off the record, one player told a journalist, "It's easy to be popular when a corporation builds your image. Try doing it with just a racket." The divide wasn't only philosophical, it was deeply practical. Lower-ranked players grinding through qualifiers, struggling without major sponsorships, felt the pressure immediately. They looked at Alex's rapid rise and wondered if this was the future. If survival now required marketing teams, influencer campaigns, and corporate backing. And if that was the new reality, many of them were already falling behind. Social media turned into a battleground. Alex's fans, young, vocal, and largely Southeast Asian, pushed back hard. Accusations of bias surfaced. "You only hate her success because she's Filipina. You can't accept that tennis is changing." The responses were just as intense. "This has nothing to do with nationality. This is about integrity." But the sharpest criticism came from an unexpected place. A respected tennis journalist published an op-ed titled "When Popularity Replaces Performance: The Dangerous Precedent of Eala." The article didn't attack Alex personally. It challenged the system itself. It argued that if relevance can be manufactured through corporate alliances and social media momentum, tennis risks losing its meritocracy. That the best marketed player could outshine the best performer. The piece went viral, and it forced the sport into conversations it had long avoided about inequality, access, and whether modern tennis was drifting toward a landscape dominated by money and image rather than results. Through all of it, Alex stayed quiet. No defensive tweets, no emotional press conferences, just a single Instagram story, a photo of her practicing at dawn. The caption read simply, "The work doesn't change." But for her critics, silence wasn't enough. They wanted answers. They wanted accountability. They wanted the WTA to intervene. But then the truth began to surface, and it didn't come from tennis insiders. It came from business reporters. There was no official investigation, but what followed was far more revealing. And what they uncovered wasn't a scandal. It was a strategy. Eala hadn't stumbled into this moment. She had built it. Court filings and corporate disclosures showed that her partnership deal had been months in the making. The Asian conglomerate involved wasn't acting on impulse. They had conducted deep market research, analyzed demographics, and identified a massive blind spot. Southeast Asia's rapidly growing middle class was hungry for representation in global sports, yet traditional tennis marketing had largely ignored them. Alex wasn't just a promising athlete. She was the ideal bridge. The rollout was methodical. Phase 1 was authentic storytelling. The Netflix documentary wasn't about ego or hype. It was positioning, emotional, accessible, and designed to connect with audiences who had never followed tennis before. Phase 2 focused on limited edition merchandise drops, borrowing tactics from streetwear culture. Scarcity created demand. Demand created belonging. Fans weren't just buying products, they were buying into a movement. Phase 3 involved influencer partnerships. Not paid endorsements, but carefully chosen collaborations with creators who genuinely connected to Alex's story. The content felt natural because it was, but the timing was coordinated, the messaging aligned, and the reach was explosive. The data confirmed it. Her merchandise was selling faster than that of some Grand Slam champions. Sponsorship analysts estimated her brand value had risen by nearly 600% in just 3 weeks. Suddenly, Alex was being invited to fashion weeks, tech summits, and cultural events that had nothing to do with tennis. And that's what unsettled people the most. None of it broke the rules. It was smart. It was legal. And it worked. Her team understood something many in tennis didn't. Modern influence isn't built on results alone. It's built on narrative, timing, and distribution. Alex had all three. Her agent, a former tech executive, approached her career like a startup. Winning matches mattered, but the larger goal was building an ecosystem. Critics called it manufactured. Supporters called it visionary. But everyone agreed on one thing: tennis had never seen anything like this. Alex wasn't waiting for success to unlock opportunity. She was creating opportunity and using it to accelerate success. The conglomerate's CEO summed it up in one interview, saying that Alex represented the future athletes who understand they aren't just competitors but brands, movements, and cultural moments. They didn't create her talent. They amplified what was already there. But amplification comes with consequences. Inside the tennis world, the volume felt too loud for comfort. The WTA found itself in an awkward position. The tension spilled into locker rooms. Players who had barely acknowledged Alex before were now forced to form opinions. Some avoided the topic entirely. Others couldn't resist. At a tournament in Dubai, a top 20 player was asked about Alex's business model. Her response was cold. She said she would rather be known for her tennis than her Instagram strategy. But not everyone shared that hostility. Younger players, in particular, saw possibility. If Alex could build her own value, maybe they could too. One player openly praised her, saying she was proving that athletes didn't need to wait for validation from the system. That comment ignited another debate. Was tennis splitting into two camps, traditionalists and entrepreneurs? The divide became visible everywhere, in press conferences, in player lounges, even on practice courts. Some players avoided hitting with Alex, citing scheduling issues. Others actively sought her out, asking about her team, her planning, her approach. The tour felt fractured in a way it hadn't before. And then came the WTA's response, or more accurately, the absence of one. Officials released a carefully worded statement, saying they supported players who engaged with fans and built their brands within established guidelines. It answered nothing, and somehow that silence said everything. They wanted accountability. They wanted the WTA to step in. But then the truth began to surface. The investigation wasn't official, yet it was relentless. Surprisingly, it wasn't sports journalists leading the charge, it was business reporters. And what they uncovered wasn't a scandal. It was a strategy. Aya hadn't stumbled into this moment by accident. She had engineered it. Court documents revealed a partnership deal that had been quietly developed months earlier. The Asian conglomerate involved wasn't just offering sponsorship money. They had done the work: market research, demographic analysis, and competitive mapping. They identified a massive gap in global tennis marketing: Southeast Asia's rising middle class, hungry for representation, largely ignored by the sport's traditional power structures. Aya wasn't just a talented athlete. She was the perfect catalyst. The strategy was precise and methodical. Phase 1 focused on authentic storytelling. The Netflix documentary wasn't about ego or vanity, it was positioning. Emotional, relatable, and deliberately crafted to attract audiences who had never watched a tennis match before. Phase 2 shifted to limited edition merchandise drops, borrowing tactics from streetwear culture. Scarcity created demand. Demand created community. Fans didn't just buy products, they felt like insiders. Phase 3 was influencer seeding. These weren't paid shoutouts or hollow endorsements. They were genuine partnerships with creators who aligned with Aya's journey and values. The content felt real because it was real. The coordination, however, was anything but accidental. The timing was tight, the messaging unified, and the reach explosive. The numbers confirmed it. Merchandise sales outpaced those of some Grand Slam champions. Sponsorship analysts estimated her brand value had increased by over 600% in just 3 weeks. Suddenly, Aya was everywhere: fashion weeks, tech conferences, cultural events completely unrelated to tennis. And that's what made people uncomfortable. It was legal, it was intelligent, and it worked. Her team understood something the sport hadn't fully accepted yet. Modern stardom isn't built on trophies alone. It's built on narrative, timing, and distribution. Aya had all three. Her agent, a former tech executive, didn't treat her like a traditional athlete. He treated her like a startup. The objective wasn't just winning matches, it was building an ecosystem. Critics labeled it manufactured. Supporters called it visionary. But everyone agreed on one thing: tennis had never seen anything like this before. Aya wasn't waiting for success to unlock opportunities. She was creating opportunities and using them to fuel success. The conglomerate's CEO summed it up in a single interview: Alex represents the future. Athletes who understand they aren't just competitors, they're brands, movements, cultural moments. We didn't create her talent, we amplified her truth. But amplification has consequences. And in tennis, not everyone was ready for the volume to be turned up this high. The tension quickly spilled into locker rooms. Players who had barely acknowledged Aya before were suddenly forced to form opinions. Some stayed silent, others didn't. At a tournament in Dubai, a top 20 player was asked about Aya's business model. Her response was cold: "I'd rather be known for my tennis than my Instagram strategy." Not everyone felt that way. Younger players in particular saw possibility. If Aya could do this, maybe they could too. One player openly praised her, saying she was proving that athletes don't have to wait for the system to validate them. They can build their own value. That statement ignited its own controversy. Was tennis splitting into two camps, traditionalists versus entrepreneurs? The divide became impossible to ignore. Some players avoided practicing with Aya, citing scheduling conflicts. Others actively sought her out, asking about her team, her methods, her playbook. The tour felt fractured in a way it hadn't before. Then came the WTA's response, or lack of one. Officials released a carefully worded statement celebrating players who engage with fans and build their brands within established guidelines. Translation: "We're not touching this." The statement satisfied no one. Critics accused the WTA of enabling inequality. Supporters claimed the organization was afraid of innovation. Behind closed doors, meetings intensified. Sponsors started asking uncomfortable questions. If one player could generate this level of attention without major titles, what did that mean for the traditional star-making system? Did rankings still matter? Some brands began shifting budgets, prioritizing engagement over world rankings. That terrified the establishment, because if engagement mattered more than performance, the hierarchy would collapse. A player ranked 80th with 2 million engaged followers could suddenly be more valuable than a top 10 player with a passive audience. Aya finally addressed the controversy at a press conference. The question was blunt. Do you think your success is deserved? She paused, looked directly at the camera, and replied, I've been working since I was 9 years old. I've earned everything I have on this court. What I do off it is simply understanding the world we live in. Tennis is a sport, but it's also a business, and I won't apologize for being good at both. The room fell silent. That clip went viral. It became a litmus test. If you agreed with Aya, you believed in athlete empowerment. If you disagreed, you believed in preserving tennis purity. There was no middle ground anymore. So what does all of this mean? Here's the uncomfortable truth. Alex Aya didn't break tennis. She exposed what it's becoming. A sport where performance still matters, but perception may matter more. Where value is measured not just in titles, but in reach, influence, and cultural relevance. For veterans who grew up in the old system, win matches, earn sponsors, repeat, Aya's rise feels unfair, like she skipped steps. But for younger players watching from the outside, locked out by funding gaps and access barriers, her path looks less like cheating and more like survival. Because what critics often forget is this: tennis has always been about money. The difference now is control. For decades, tournaments, federations, and brands held the power. Players competed for what was left. Aya flipped the model. She built her own engine, and whether people like it or not, it's working. Her sales haven't slowed. Brands aren't backing away, they're doubling down. The conglomerate partnership has expanded into new markets. Her next merchandise drop is projected to generate more revenue than some WTA 250 tournaments. Still, the questions remain. If every player prioritizes branding over rankings, what happens to competitive integrity? If tennis becomes an influencer economy, does it lose its soul? And most importantly, if corporate backing becomes essential, what happens to players who can't secure it? Aya's supporters argue she's democratizing success. Her critics say she's creating a new barrier. Both may be right, because this story isn't a fairy tale or a warning. It's a mirror. One thing is certain: the WTA world will never be the same. Whether that's progress or a problem is up to you. Alex Aya didn't just trigger a sales explosion. She ignited a conversation tennis has avoided for years about power, access, and who gets to define success. And no matter which side you're on, one truth is undeniable: she made the entire world pay attention. The real question now is, what happens next?